Good, good. Morning, morning, Margaret. Good morning,
Morning.
Martin. Julian on mute. Have you...
Morning.
He's
Morning,
got the builders in. Morning, Natalie.
Morning.
Let's see if we get anybody else joining today. It's a bit. Oh, here comes Owen. Yeah, it's a bit quiet this morning. Everybody must have a big hit by the cold.
Well, half the country's on the bank holiday, on school holidays, aren't they?
School holidays today. Oh, yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah, so it's half term for half the country, as my half is next
yeah,
week.
yeah, because my half's next week. Yeah.
We're on week two. We're on week 2 of 2 up here. So
2.
Yeah, they get 2 up. Yeah.
Far too generous up there.
You know why it is? It's if you live in Scotland, you'll understand. So we call this type of time of holiday. It's not half term. It's tatty holidays, because this was all this time of year that the kids would have 2 weeks off to pick the tatties to help all the farmers. So in this part of Scotland, that 2-week tatty holidays have been retained. So yes.
Yeah. We've had a long history of child labour.
Yeah.
And now everybody just eats chips.
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks of eating chips. They should have a chip holiday.
With the present situation on getting people to come in and pick fruit, I think there might be a few more of those holidays coming along.
Yeah,
so,
tatties have become much more in fashion again this last couple of months. The cost of living side of things seems to be challenged. Tatties have definitely become more of a thing.
Yeah.
Morning, all.
Morning.
Morning.
Everybody. Right. No, well, we got a few more. It's interesting. Austin was just talking to me about something. I'll mention it after the presentation, because it actually has something. It's linked to something which happened to me to do with insurance. So we'll talk about that when we finish the actual presentation. But for the moment, yes, insurance it's one of those things people don't think too much about, but I've seen over time that actually you can lose a lot of money out of insurance, either not for not having it, or for paying for too much, basically. So it's quite a good one to understand, and that's why we've got Margaret with us today. So I'll just let her share the screen. Oops, just a minute.
I'm going to talk. So hopefully that's okay. But having been on holiday last week and not quite sure of how much people know and what's going to be of interest, I'm very much going to talk to you, and happy to send any information over afterwards. But I don't have slides, so hopefully that's okay. I wasn't sure if the format really works, but I'm not going to bore you with lots.
Oh, we've lost her. Hello. Oh, we lost you a second there.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not going to, as I say, insurance can be a dry enough subject without bombarding people with slides, so hopefully we'll try and make it a bit more interesting.
Okay. Right, well, go ahead and
Excellent. Thank you. So good morning all. My name is Margaret Hepburn. I have been running an NFU mutual agency for over 5 years now. I've worked in the insurance industry for actually over 34 years, which I never ever intend. I don't think anybody ever plans to go into insurance, but it just happens and you just don't get out again. So that's been me for my whole working career, really. I don't know how much anybody knows about NFU and what we do, but NFU Mutual was created from a group of farmers and was basically developed to look after insurance for the farming industry. But things have moved on particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. So whilst traditionally we focused on farms and States, the markets that we work in have widened significantly, and the key areas and the key markets that we work in are could be categorized as basically field to fork. So target markets include hospitality and a huge number of other industries as well. But one of the markets in particular our office specialises in is hospitality, and I really love the hospitality industry. I think it's actually very similar to farming in that it's very much a close-knit industry, and people work very closely with one another. So I find it great. I think the last 2 to 3 years from a hospitality insurance point of view have been really difficult for you guys, because we've seen a number of underwriters withdrawing from the hospitality market, particularly from a hotel point of view. We've seen market capacity reduce severely, which has meant, particularly I think some larger hotels have struggled from a pricing increase point of view, and also moving from maybe when you're looking at a risk or a building that's over £30 million sort of level, really struggling and having to purchase layers of protection. So one underwriter is not happy to take the whole risk themselves, and you're having to look at maybe even 2 or 3 underwriters to ensure the full value at risk, if that's something you're doing. From a value at risk point of view, an underwriter will look at not just the buildings and contents to come up with what they would class as the value at risk, but they'll look at the 3-year, generally 3-year gross profit of the hotel as well, to come up with a total figure as to what they consider the value at risk, and then make a judgment on how much of that they are prepared to underwrite. So that's where we're seeing a lot of the layers coming in from that point of view. During the last 4 or 5 years within NFU Mutual, we have really seen a significant growth in our hotel and hospitality customer base. So we specialise and work closely with a number of industry specialists. So we work alongside the Scottish Tourism Alliance and attend their conferences, that sort of thing. Our office, we've partnered and worked with the Hoteliers Charter. So looking at how they work with their members, they're soon to come under the UK hospitality umbrella, but we'll also work with property consultants who do a lot of the buying and selling of hotels, and hotel management companies as well. So as I say, I like the way the industry works, because you guys are all seem to be connected to one another and are actually quite good at helping each other, whereas other industries are maybe not quite so kind to each other like that. So so I guess what we are very much about is helping businesses to, and I think Robin touched on this a little bit, to make sure that when you are spending on insurance, you're spending on the things that are right for you. So lots of people will talk about, you need to have insurance for this, you need to have insurance for that, and very conscious that insurance is something you can continue buying more and more and more of, and it's about understanding what are the greatest risks to your business, what risks can you remove, what risks can you reduce, and then what are the risks that you need to think about insuring. So in terms of the key risks, then I think everybody will look and see, yeah, property is a key risk and something that will generally need to be insured. And you've got your buildings, your contents, your stock. It's really important to think about what your sums insured should be. So from a building point of view, what is your reinstatement cost? If you are If you've had a professional valuation carried out on your property in the last 5 years, that can really help from a cost point of view. Insurers really like that. They will generally, if you've had a valuation carried out, they will guarantee that you don't get hit by average, so have your claim reduced because your sum insured isn't adequate enough. They'll generally guarantee that for around 5 years if you've had a valuation done recently. So need to think about what it would cost to replace or rebuild your hotel, your outbuildings. Think about any fancy walls, entrances, sculptures, signages, that sort of thing. Are there any special features? Is your property listed in, is it a listed building? That can always add cost when you're looking at rebuild costs. And one of the things that NFU Mutual are very good at underwriting is listed buildings. They've got a lot of experience when it comes to a claim about getting the building back to the way it was before with the listings and things like that. Replacement costs should be, you need to include debris removal, which could be significant from a cost point of view, particularly if you're sort of a city centre location, architects' fees, and other things that people don't always consider. If you've got a car park, damage to car park, the cost of, repairing or replacing a car park can be quite significant as well. So that sort of things. As I said, it's quite a good idea to have a professional valuation carried out if you can. Things to think about from a risk point of view. Generally, the risks that will be insured are quite standard in terms of the perils that are insured, but terrorism is something that you maybe have to consider when looking at what insurance you're purchasing. That terrorism risk very much depends on where your property is located. So rural Scotland, country hotel, probably not really at risk from terrorism attacks. Terrorism is not just your yobs that are out on a Saturday night. Terrorism is your proper terrorists, your Al Qaeda or whatever. So terrorism insurance, if you are located somewhere close to sort of a particularly at-risk infrastructure, or perhaps close to political base or royal base or something like that, which might be considered to be a terrorist target, then I would seriously consider insuring against terrorism, and it doesn't have to be that expensive to insure. Subsidence, again, looking at the age of the building, and I would always recommend insuring against subsidence. Again, costs are very low from that point of view. Sprinklers are becoming more of an issue for your really large properties. So if you do have a sprinkler system, then insuring against the leakage of that system is really important as well. From a business interruption point of view, the key thing there is to consider how long it would take to rebuild your property in the event of a claim, and obviously that needs to take into account any planning side of things, any site clearance, that sort of thing. So how long it would take to rebuild your property and then re-establish the trading levels to the pre-loss level of trading. So whilst you might be able to rebuild a hotel in a year or whatever, think about how far in advance your target market books for, if you're doing a lot of weddings, conferences, that sort of thing. Are you going to miss an entire year of bookings because you're not sure exactly when you're opening, or customers are booking that far in advance and are not going to book if they can't see what it is they're booking? So business interruption is there to protect your income for the period that your income is impacted by the loss you've had. So a large fire might take 18 months to rebuild and another 18 months to re-establish the pre-loss levels of trading that you've sat at. So for a hotel, for a largest hotel, I would certainly always recommend you're looking at a 3-year period for that side of things. I think that's really important. Also from a loss of income point of view, there's loads and loads of, I guess, add-on type covers or covers that some underwriters include as standard, others don't. What sort of loss or incident could affect your income? We had at the beginning of this year and the end of last year, there was a lot of bad storms across the country. A number of hotels suffered because they were without power for a period of time. If you're without power and have to cancel a conference, a wedding, spa breaks, whatever it is, then again your income can be affected significantly. Now that would generally be covered as standard on a policy if the power outage was because trees had come down on your property and brought your power lines down. Usually an insurer will also cover if your your utility company had an issue at their location, but what's not generally covered as standard is the area between the power supplier and your boundary. If something happens between that area, that's not generally covered, so that's something you should look at as an extension to cover. Things like the human diseases, obviously we've had a major issue with that. Prevention of access because of local authority. We've had situations where bin collections been delayed and that businesses have been shut down because they can't produce any more rubbish, so they can't trade. The local authority have said that they can't trade. We've had incidences where there's been murders at properties and customers are not allowed to trade. So those sorts of things, it's always good to check you've got this sort of a wide range of coverage there. From a property point of view, more and more and more we're seeing underwriters for any risk of any sort of any size, substantial size, cooking equipment is having to be protected by fire suppression systems. And that's where looking at the risk that you've got is key to see how you can reduce that risk. So can you put fire suppression in place? Can you reduce your risk by CCTV, fire alarm, burglar alarms, that sort of thing? One of the key areas that we see claims coming in for is slips, trips, falls, and what we do is work with our customers to try and help them reduce the incidence of slips, trips and falls. So we've got a risk management arm that will help people look at where the risks might be presented and how they can reduce those. We also like to produce information to customers just to help them, so guidance notes, that sort of thing. I'm happy to send these sorts of things out to anybody that would be interested, but just a bit of help. As I say, the more you can reduce the risk that is presented from an insurance point of view, the more that your insurance premiums should reduce. And that is one of the things that we do with our customers. We work really closely to try and understand what it is that makes the risk that they present lower than, you know, the standard risk. So if you're somebody that is trying to reduce the risk, then we will paint a picture to the underwriters, work really closely with them so that they can see that hotel or that hospitality business and the one that might be next door to them. So that's something that we're really keen to do. From a health and safety point of view, it is really, if you're working with consultants, if you have had an audit done recently, if you're ensuring that your staff that are coming in are getting really good induction training and are aware of what's going on. The things that will add to a premium from a liability point of view are things like the presence of swimming pools. So how do you manage the risk of your swimming pool? If you're having a lot of functions, a lot of weddings, a lot of conferences, obviously with those events comes drink, and people drinking and slipping and falling is a major form of loss from our point of view. So the more you can do, and things like CCTV is really important. If you've got a customer trying to claim that they've tripped because there was a hazard there, but you've got CCTV that shows that they could barely stand up without the hazard, then these sorts of things really help from a claims management point of view. So it's important to look at that. When you are looking at liability from that point of view, employers' liability as a minimum, you'll find everybody's is providing £10 million worth of cover, and generally, unless you are employing a huge number of staff at one location, that should be sufficient. Public liability, you tend to have a choice, and starting at about 2.5 million up to 10 million is standard, and then able to buy higher layers above that if you have a lot of celebrities staying, for example, or huge numbers of people staying. Then from a public liability point of view, you would look at that sort of thing. Environmental liability is also something to consider. So if you're polluting the watercourse, for example, from gradually with if there was a leak coming out of your kitchens or something like that, that would be picked up under environmental liability cover. The other thing that probably has only really been in the last 4 or 5 years look to put in place is management liability. Your partners, you're working for you in a management capacity, health and safety breaches, trading standards, food standards, all of those sorts of issues. I sometimes refer to it as the guilty man's policy, because it's very much about protecting where errors have been made by the management or directors team, and really important from that point of view. Provide the policies that we tend to use provide a really good legal support mechanism as well, access to really good level of solicitors, with helplines and unlimited kind of support from a legal helpline point of view, which is really important. Alongside that, you can also look at, from an employment point of view, what we call employment practices cover. That would cover any allegations from employees of things like harassment, discrimination, unfair dismissal, that sort of thing. And the key thing with that, again, is that you've got access to the lawyers, the legal helpline, so they would provide a really strong HR type of support function there. Top lawyers, if there's some sort of issue that you have, you phone up, get their advice, and if you take their advice, then any excess is usually waived on that element of the cover as well, which is really important. The other thing that's become a massive problem from a hospitality point of view over the last couple of years is cyber. So cybercrime, cyber fraud, so people hacking into systems and managing to extract customer data, managing to divert invoice payments, managing to access booking vouchers and things like that. So we do see a lot of this within hotels. And with cyber, one of the key things is to make sure that your IT systems are protected as to the maximum level that they can. And what's happened in the cyber insurance market over the last couple of years is it's become more and more difficult to get insurance for that. and certainly you will only get insurance if you have all of the right kind of protections in place. So the phishing training with staff, the multi-factor authentication, all of that sort of stuff. But really important to demonstrate that you've got that, and then the ability to purchase cover and purchase at a reasonable cost will be there as well. Something that a lot of businesses don't necessarily think about and is really important is what we call a key man side of things. So if you have a key member of your management team that that really the successful running of your hotel is really dependent on, then you've got to think about what would you do if that member of staff or member of your management team was no longer there. And it's possible to ensure the ability to financially try and replace that person. And I think that's something that is becoming more and more important, particularly as it's becoming harder and harder to recruit quality management within the industry, I would say. So it's possible to look at that so that you've at least got the finances in place to be able to buy in some really good expertise should the worst happen with that side of things. So quite a lot to think about there. Sorry, bombarding you. Very much, and this is not about a sales pitch or anything like that, but I'm as I say, I really do enjoy working in the industry and would be delighted to help anyone that would like to do a review of their current arrangements. We can provide quotes, we can give expert advice on what you should be considering, how to potentially reduce the risks that you've got, making sure you're paying for the right covers, that you've got sufficient cover, but also that you're not insuring something that you don't need to insure. And I'll let Robin touch on that in a wee while as well. But making sure you're spending the money on the right priorities for your business, what your main risks are. So the benefits, I guess, of the service we offer is it is very much about a personal service. It's an advised service. You know, you can go online and buy pretty much whatever you want, but when you're insuring an asset as important you need to take advice. You do need to
lost your volume there, Mark. Have you?
Oh, I'm still there. Yep.
Yeah.
For dealing with claims, the service that you're getting is the service that you need, and anybody that deals with us gets access to one of the key partners in our business, and you know we're not a 9-to-5 business. I know you guys are definitely not a 9-to-5 business. We're not a 9-to-5 business. We we're there when customers need us. That's not to say we're 24 hours like you are, but yeah, no, we try and work as flexibly as we can. We've got a small team of people that really understand what we're doing. We review all of our customers' insurances, or we offer to review them. Sometimes people don't want to, but we offer to review them all at least annually. We don't have hidden fees. Basically, if you're insured through our office, you've got access to pay your insurance monthly at no additional cost. You don't get charged admin fees, you don't get charged advice fees, nothing like that. The rates the vast majority of the business that we insure is underwritten by NFU itself. NFU is a mutual company, so no shareholders' profits to worry about. And what happens with that is that each year, depending on what profits that the company has made, those profits go back to the members by means of a discount of their renewal policy. And that discount does go up in a sliding scale between 1 and 5 years, depending on how many years you've been insured with us. So rewarding loyalty basically from that point of view. It's a member organisation, and that's what it's all about. So we don't operate. It's a relatively small team. It's not a call centre where you're pressing 1 for this or waiting 20 minutes for somebody to answer the phone. Our phones are all answered pretty much within 2 or 3 rings, and really helpful team of guys in the office that provide a fantastic service to the customers. They really do, and I think that's because the sort of membership. As I say, I don't want to make this a sales. Be happy to help anybody that would like us to look at what they've got, and I guess a lot of information. So really happy to take any questions or any comments that you've got, or from that point of view.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Has anybody? I've got a couple of questions, but has anybody else got questions that they'd like to ask Margaret? No, right.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do actually have one. So I often hear different answers to this, but what's your opinion in terms of like a pragmatic claim amount? So in the past, if I've discussed like making a small claim, I don't know, £1,000, most mortgage brokers would say that's too small to be commercially sensible over the long term. What sort of claim amount would you suggest is sort of a commercially sensible minimum?
It really depends on, I guess it really depends on how you run your P&L and stuff like that, because a lot of hotels will work with really high excesses, particularly if they're part of a chain or a group, and that's fine if you're operating on a consolidated P&L basis. But if you're running your P&L locally, you need to think about what makes a difference to that P&L for you. Insuring something like a hotel, if we had a customer that had 2 or 3 £1,000 claims in a year, that's not a problem. It's not like you lose a no claim discount or whatever. You need to think about your excess levels, obviously, but again, the vast majority of hotels we work with, we work with our standard excesses, so for £250 for storm, that kind of level. I guess if it's £1,000 and you've not had a claim, then yeah, I would say if a claim like £1,000 type of property claim, so let's say, I don't know, a TV falling off the wall and smashing, that sort of thing, we would handle that in our office. We've got the authority to deal with that. That would be dealt with, done and dusted in a day probably, and you would have the money in the bank. So it's not a hassle. We don't deal with claim forms, that sort of thing. So liability claims are different. I think you really are best to report any type of incident that
No, lost you again.
becoming.
Sorry, so that last little bit, so report anything really, did you say? Because
become.
Hello, Margaret, can you hear us?
Oh.
Oh. Hello,
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, we just lost you again for a few minutes. Oops, and again.
Oh, yeah. I would report anything that looks like it's that could come to something, because the minute Digby Brown get their teeth into anything, then yeah, it can become something that you might think is absolutely nothing could become a claim. But yeah, property really is it's something. Is it a hassle? Is it something you can, if you've got your own maintenance guys that they can deal with? But if not, no, you're paying for insurance with that level of excess. So unless you're having 3 or 4 or 5 a year, I would say, yeah, just put it through as a claim, and it can be dealt with really quickly and easily. So yeah.
Okay. Can I just check, because one thing that you mentioned was sort of the volume, that insurance companies now are a bit worried about sort of the size of the deal, as it were. But is it still a viable thing to make sure that all the insurances are in the same, like if you've got different hotels, they're all renewed at the same time and sort of like as a bulk sort of package, as it were?
Yeah, definitely. And when I talk about the value at risk, it's what an insurer will calculate, what they call the EML.
No, we can't hear you.
Which is the estimated maximum loss. So if your EML is, let me try and see.
I think it's the actual Wi-Fi coverage, Margaret.
Oh,
it keeps dropping off.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, the insurer will calculate what they call
No.
You've got 6 hotels in 6 different locations. Going to be the maximum risk is the risk at that one location. So actually having them all at the same time is giving you more buying power.
Okay. Yeah, we keep, you must have a bit of a poor Wi-Fi connection, I'm afraid, Margaret. It keeps clicking off a second. I'll go on because it was interesting before everybody came on talking to Austin about embedded fixtures, and he's got something about capital claims which might be interesting. But before we mentioned that, it was interesting with one of my clients that the broker that they were actually dealing with had automatically, possibly because something in some document or other, had automatically included an amount for £5 million for embedded fixtures or tenant's responsibility, which, as far as we understood, was like anything that was on the tenant, anything was done by a previous tenant that wasn't the original structure had to be covered. And we went through because we went through a very quick insurance thing, because we took over a hotel, it went through very quickly, and that's fine. And then this year we went through and actually talked about it and actually started to understand what this thing was. And it was, and the thing that struck me most about the broker is at first they kind of were trying to defend that this thing had to exist. And then they says, well, actually, no, we can't give you advice. You'll have we can only do the deal that you ask us to do. And it got to the stage where, well, thanks to Margaret, we did actually do some investigation. We did actually do some checking and found out that we never had to pay for that insurance in the first place, that cover. And we've probably cost us about £5,000 over the previous year that we then saved in this coming year. So it's interesting whether the brokers are actually obliged to be on your side, as it were, almost. You know, it's
and that comment that they can't give you advice is wrong. They can't advise you on what the value of a building is. So we're not building surveyors, so I can't look at a hotel and say that would cost you £5 million to rebuild. I can't give you that type of advice, but I can advise you on what you need, you know, how you should be looking to value what you're insuring. So yeah, the whole idea of commercial insurance is an advised service, and that's what we provide. That's why we're here. Otherwise you could just go online and buy something online. You know, you're buying an advice service from a broker, and that is exactly why they're there. So yeah, that's poor.
Mm-hmm. And is there actually, I mean, with that, I mean, is there any kind of, if a broker does advise you badly, is there any comeback on that as far as sort of legal comeback, or is it a case of, well, they go back to the story, well, actually we don't advise you, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, insurance brokers will have professional indemnity insurance where they've provided advice and it's ended up with you losing out financially. I suspect, knowing who it is, they'll dig their heels in. I don't think you'll get very far with it, but
Yeah.
it's one to rack up to experience probably, but yeah, very poor, because it does stand out like a sore thumb in terms of what was in there. I mean, it just was crazy numbers. So yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting because, yeah, you mentioned before about, for example, the Ansell. Now, yeah, we did have issues with getting somebody to just insure the property because it didn't have the Ansell installed,
Yeah.
and it was like almost to get that first deal, it was almost a desperate thing to try and find the right person. So it was almost, you know, but it is.
You will get time to put these, generally an underwriter will give you time to do these risk improvements, and so, you know, if you didn't have it, it would be right, well, you have to do it within X number of days of the insurance being put in place, and, you know, maybe 60 days or something like that. So you will really, yeah, I mean, you can't do something with a magic wand, unfortunately. These things do take time, and I know it's been quite tricky the last couple of years getting things like Ansell systems installed or serviced or whatever. So yeah.
And do you think it's sometimes more cost effective? I mean, you mentioned earlier about CCTV in case of liabilities and all this sort of thing. Is it sometimes cheaper to put in a CCTV system than because of the gains you can get from some cover, or you know, where
over time it can be, yeah. I mean, it's obviously, it's like anything, you're making an upfront investment, but you will use it, and you know, that's fine. So yeah, I think we find that, you know, more and more people are trying to make a fast buck by claiming off people. But if you've got evidence and there's something that you can do to defend yourself, then obviously that's helpful. And, you know, particularly when you're talking about weddings and whatever else, and people are yeah, enjoying the facilities, shall we say.
Is it harder these days for insurance company? Well, not for insurance companies, for client. I mean, in America, somebody stubs their toe and it's a £1,000 lawsuit or whatever, you know. Is it getting that way here? Is it, because it seems to be getting very, almost a case of you've got to have stuff to defend yourself just in case somebody wants to try and take you to the cleaners. Is that?
Yeah, and that's where the CCTV helps and the protections. But yeah, we've got cases where people have fallen down. You know, there's railings. The railings are not sufficient enough for them, or there's some reason. Yeah, the customer will claim clearly they've been well inebriated and they've fallen down steps or whatever, but they'll still try and claim off the property. So yeah,
I remember one hotel where we had a claim from a lady, rather voluminous lady, who tripped over a tree stump chasing after her cat, who she decided to take for a walk in the garden. It was off the actual pathway, as it were, and it was like a claim of, well, should you be off the pathway and all the rest of it. It's you know, it's she twisted her ankle because she chased her cat.
Yep. And it could easily have happened in her own garden as well, probably.
So yeah, it's okay, that's good. Anybody else got any other questions on insurance, comments? No.
I've got a comment. You know, I had someone who'd asked me to look at the insurance for them just recently, and in the process, I decided to have a look at our own insurance, and was quite horrified to see that the amount that I was paying was really quite ridiculous when I got quotes, and from very reputable companies, you know. And one of them I managed to get, you know, it was 300% of a difference. and all of the quotes that I did get were all less than what currently we are paying, which surprised me quite a bit. And I thought, well, it's time now to look at changing. So I found that the best one was one of the banks that I deal with, and that was a 55% reduction in the cost on a yearly basis. Well, that's an awful lot. So it's something that sometimes I hadn't been even looking at it thinking there was anything, you know, you just carry on and ignore it and think, well, okay, I'm paying it all the time, and I'm getting good cover. So you just, it's only when someone actually asked me to go and have a look at theirs because it was up for renewal next month. Could you find out if you could get someone better than what I'm dealing with? So obviously, I'm changing when it expires, which is almost 6 weeks away. So I will be changing, and it's one of the banks. And so I thought, well, that's as reliable as I can get. And 55% in anybody's money is quite a difference. And the cover is every bit exact. It's exactly the same. It's covering everything. In fact, it's actually covering more than I'm covered for at the moment. So it's something I think that people should probably look at. It's not in the hospitality industry. It's not something that's a top priority. People are interested in sales and revenue, you know, and profit on this, that, and the next thing. And the insurance is something that's probably 9 times out of 10 forgotten about. They just carry on, and you know, as long as they're getting renewed, well, fine. So it's something worth looking at.
Yeah, it's considered almost like a necessity that people kind of just contract, and then they don't really, they kind of let it tick over, and they don't actually look at whether it's actually still viable. So.
And the devil is often in the detail as well. So it is really important just to have somebody to look at it and make sure that, you know, even if you stay where you are, just to have somebody to review what you've got and just chat about. And that, you know, that's the first thing that we do, is just understand the business a bit better. What is it you do? What have you got? That sort of thing. And then make sure that the covers that you've got are right for how you run your business and what concerns you. But yeah, the devil is often in the detail. Costs, you know, it might not be a massive cost every month, but at a time when everything is going up, then, you know, you need to make sure that you are getting the best value for the money that you're spending. Good. And that you're dealing with a company that's going to, at the end of the day, you know, you're buying insurance, but it doesn't mean anything until you come to having to make a claim, and you want to make sure that when that happens, that it's as smooth and as easy, and that you've got somebody that's working with you. As you say, your broker is there to represent you. They're not there to represent the insurer. They're there to represent you. So that's important.
Very true. Very true. Thank you very much, Margaret. That's been very enlightening, very helpful. I'm just going to give way to Austin for a quick information that he gave me before everybody came online, but I think it's quite interesting sort of to take away, and possibly other people. Thank you again, Margaret.
That's no problem. Will you circulate my contact details, and if anybody wants to get in touch, then they can.
I will do.
So.
Yeah, thanks. Certainly.
Thanks, Robin. I've just put a link in the chat for anybody that wants to look a bit further into it. But I've come across. I was introduced to a company a couple of months ago who's working outside of the hotel industry, mostly in with holiday parks and bits and pieces. And it turns out that there is additional tax relief that you can claim as a business for what's called embedded fixtures. Embedded fixtures is probably easiest described by if you picked up your hotel or hospitality business with a big hand, put it upside down, gave it a good shake, and then anything that's left in there, i.e. anything that's attached, is classed as an embedded fixture. So that can be lighting, pipe work, heat, HVAC, even down to fixed furniture, so bars, for example. Now, the thing about embedded fixtures is they have a different tax treatment. And so one of the things that happens is that if you happen to have bought your property before 2014 in the hospitality industry, then you can actually go back and claim an allowance for the embedded fixtures that you bought as part of the property purchase. And they can typically find that to sometimes between 20 to 40% of the total purchase. So it doesn't necessarily always get treated as a specialist area. The other interesting thing is, of course, if you haven't bought prior to 2014, if you've spent, and we worked out the maths on this, approximately £100,000 in the last 10 years on either the maintenance, repair or replacement of embedded fixtures, you can also put in a claim against HMRC for tax allowance on that. So effectively, in the hospitality industry, it's a kind of industry that has a lot of embedded fixtures. I started working with them on, we were talking about pipe work and cabling, and you know, you imagine the cabling that goes into into putting in a Wi-Fi system and things like that, and it has a different tax treatment because it's actually a fixed cabling treatment as opposed to just the money you would have got just for the cables. But we came up with things like doors and locks and anything that's actually a fixed attachment into the building, which is considered part of the intrinsic value of the operational business. So it's something I'm doing more and more research into and spreading the word on. We've featured it on Amenity Warehouse. We just started doing that in the last couple of weeks. But if anyone knows anyone that falls into those two categories, i.e. has a property that was purchased prior to 2014 or has spent typically 100 grand plus over the last 10 years on fixed things, you know, bathroom refurbs, bathroom suites, all fixed, sinks, all fixed, taps, all fixed, all that stuff can get special treatment. Now, what they do, this company that I work with, which is a company called Eureka, they effectively have a team of specialists in it and surveyors, so they'll, you know, do a desktop analysis of it first, work out roughly what you would be qualified for, and then they arrange a fee for going in and doing your surveying and managing it all through. So it's worth looking into if you fall into those two camps on the maintenance or the purchase.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because by nature of it, there's two types of hotel company: the ones who maintain their infrastructure and probably spend a lot of money keeping that infrastructure up to date and probably could benefit a lot from something like that. Yeah. And then the other type who like kind of let the whole thing fall to pieces because they know they're going to leave the contract, management contract in so many years or whatever. But it's quite interesting that you almost get tax allowance for doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, and the thing that sparked my interest in it is because it's something that I'm always looking out for things that are happening outside of the industry, because we look outside of the industry, people do things and it becomes a norm to a lot of businesses, but it wouldn't necessarily be. And you know, the big question that I think people come up with all the time is, well, my accountant would have done that. And it depends if there's a specific embedded fix. If you've never seen an embedded fixtures report on a building, then it's probably not been assessed as an embedded fixtures list. So it's worth looking at anyway.
Okay, good information. Right, thank you very much for that, Austin. And I think that brings us to the end today. Thank you everybody for attending. Thank you again, Margaret, for that insight on insurance, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in about a month's time
for number 50.
For number 50 indeed. Yes, thank you for that.
50.
Yeah, perhaps we should get out some
we all have to have a glass of something in our hands for number 50, sure.
Yeah. Yes, I'll mention that when I call the action for the next one. We'll try and have a bit of a celebration.
You've got all the home addresses, Robin. You can
send it out.
No, you'll be sending it to me. No, I'm. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good week.
See you later. Bye, everyone.
All right.